Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of the Weekly Pitch. Matt Price here. As the reason why we are doing a special version of this show is because there was breaking news that broke out. We usually record the show a couple days before it's posted. So in this case, the episode you're going to see would be on Friday. We're recording on Wednesday for this particular show because earlier today, Wednesday, April 22nd, it was revealed that the Red Sox finally received their quote-unquote punishments for their alleged scandal dating back to their 2018 World Series championship year. So with that said, I would like to welcome in my panel. For tonight's special episode, we have longtime Boston Red Sox fan and former host of the Weekly Pitch, Bryan Hultgren. We also have another longtime Red Sox fan, Sierra Keat, also a former host of the Weekly Pitch, and of course, James Murphy. How are all of you doing?
Suffering Mets fan.
Yes,
doing Ben. Never forget about our basically our National League equivalent from the NL East. Big Mets fan as well, mostly because of my dad's side. But yeah, absolutely doing great.
Fantastic. All right, so this is what we're going to talk about throughout the whole show because it is a big headline, especially when it somewhat relates to the scandal involving the 2017 World Series champion Houston Astros, and you could put that in quotes as well. So, Bryan, let's start with you. The punishment handed down today by Rob Manfred, okay? And I know you have a lot to say about him, but first, from the Red Sox side of things, they lose their second-round draft pick, right? They lose the second-round draft pick. They do not have their replay operator for not just this year in case baseball comes back, but also he's not allowed to be in any kind of replay room for 2021 as well. And Alex Cora only gets suspended for this year despite everything that's happened, especially when even though, let's say, he did or did not know that this was going on under his watch, it still sheds a bad light on him, and this is going to stain him big time. Your thoughts on the developments that unfolded this week?
You know, in all seriousness, the thoughts that I had, the first one was, this is exactly what I figured was going to happen from the Red Sox perspective. I mean, right from the beginning, all the reports were basically indicating that what they were doing was absolutely nowhere near as bad as what the Astros were doing. And for what I understand, the best way I could do it was that they found a little bit of a loophole and they were exploiting it, or a select few of them were, I should say. And quite frankly, my big worry from a Red Sox fan perspective was how deep did this go? And according to the report, I'm just going on what the report said, that Alex Cora was not involved, okay, and a vast majority of the players were not, because I was afraid from that perspective. But yeah, I'm actually very pleasantly surprised that the report came out as such. And, you know, I mean, happy that the World Series isn't entirely tainted for the Red Sox from 2018. Because by far and away, if you're going to tell me that that little replay room alone was why they were the best team in baseball, just more power to you.
Now, Sierra, I want to bring you into the conversation because I was looking at a clip from the Michael Kay show. As all of you know, Michael Kay is the voice of the New York Yankees on television. And he made the point that even though what the Red Sox did was wrong, he felt that in this case it was sort of quote-unquote gamesmanship. However, the Red Sox did use the replay room the wrong way, at least when it came to runners on second base. So from your perspective, talking from a fan's perspective, what are you thinking about right now when it comes to the developments that unfolded, and what do you think other Red Sox fans are thinking about right now? Do you think they feel vindicated? Do you think they're a little skeptical about this? Is it a little bit of both? Your thoughts?
I think it is a little bit of both. Primarily since, while Bryan pointed out it maybe wasn't as bad as the Astros, cheating is still cheating. And personally, that's not okay. But I feel like the punishment was fair for the Red Sox.
You do think it was fair?
I mean, I think they could have done more, not just with the Red Sox, but also with the Astros as well. I I don't believe they should have let the players off the hook. I think players should have been punished as well, because I think while they claim to not have known that they couldn't use the review to see the pitcher's hand signals, I think they were likely aware. Just my speculation, though.
My apologies, Sierra. Thank you very much. So James, looking at Sierra made a great point. She just made a great point about how the Astros was player driven. The Red Sox, we don't know what this was. We don't know if this was player driven or if this was led by the replay operator himself. He's named JT Watkins. That's the name of the replay operator. So first of all, what are your thoughts on this? And do you think that this was just a rogue employee, or do you think that this might be something more and this is something that the MLB did not look at very, very carefully?
Well, first things first, I feel a little bit conflicted on the issue. On the one hand, I think the Red Sox, like Brian and Sierra said, weren't quite as heinous in their means of cheating as the Astros were. That being said, I think that the actions Manfred took were just a little bit spineless. Then again, we already knew that from the sides he took with the Mets ownership debacle, but that's not what we're here for. So, and overall, I think more information should have been gathered before making a final verdict on this, because as you said, we don't know quite as much about what they were doing. For all we know, it was bad and they're not letting on as much. But either way, it could have been handled better per usual.
Yeah. But my whole thing with like the whole punishment scenario for the Red Sox is just, what could you have done to them, like, to really satisfy everyone? Because here's the big problem. If you punished them worse than what the Astros were doing, like, which the Astros, what they were doing was blatant cheating. They were using a video room that they had exclusive access to, and they were using that room to alert hitters of what pitches were coming, and they were banging on trash cans. The replay room that the Red Sox were using was one, a room that a lot of other teams in the MLB had access to in their respected stadiums, and two, was not even used during the postseason. That was confirmed during the report. So from that perspective, it's like you really can't punish them any worse than the Astros. Otherwise, it would have been a horrific look for not just Manfred, but the entire MLB.
You make a good point, Brian, and when it comes to me personally, yes, I'm not a Red Sox fan, but I'm a baseball fan first, okay? I'm a baseball fan first, and I know cheating when I see it. The Red Sox scandal was not as heinous as the Astros. We can all agree on that.
Yeah.
However, we can all agree that the Red Sox, at least from what my understanding is, no matter whose idea this was and who went along with it, it was still wrong.
Yeah.
It was still wrong.
Yeah, it was nowhere near as bad as I think a lot of people were making it out to be, but to an extent, I get the argument that they should have probably just left well enough alone. And yeah, I really have no response to that. Like, my whole thing is just, again, they found a loophole with some of the rules, they exploited it a little too much for their own good, and yeah, now they got to pay a little bit of a price.
James, do you believe that Manfred might have rushed this investigation? And here's why I say that, and then all you could jump in when it comes to this point. The Houston Astros report came out a month before spring training, okay? And everyone was, really upset, especially baseball fans. Obviously, their Astros fans are saying, oh, who cares? We won the World Series. But do you think that this investigation, and if not both investigations, were rushed? Do you think Manfred is just letting it happen and then not going further into the scope of how critical this is, if you know what I mean?
In regards to the Astros, I don't think it's that the situation was rushed. I think it's that they got all the information they needed and still didn't do nearly enough to punish them. And in terms of the Red Sox, I definitely think it was a little bit rushed, but it was handled a little bit better than that of the Astros. So Obviously, the Red Sox didn't do as much wrong, so it's a little bit harder to jumble that. But either way, it is an improvement from how they handled the Astros thing. Although personally, I would like to see Alex Cora banned instead of the entirety of this year, because we might not get an entire season. I'd like to see him be suspended for 162 games. So this means that even if there are 100 games this year, then he has to sit out the first 62 regular season games for next year. That's just what I'd like to see.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of on the opposite end with this one. I think personally the exact opposite with the Red Sox scandal. I think personally they were dragging this out for far too long. Because let's go through the timeline. The timeline was the first report came out right around the time that the Astros punishment was handed down. So right around the first 2 weeks of January. And Manfred said that he was going to have it done before spring training. Well, spring training comes around, the report was not yet published, and it kept getting pushed back over and over and over again. And, like, for me personally, like, it was just – I think he was just either trying to keep it going for as long as he could to take some of the heat off from, like, what happened with the Astros situation, which I'll touch on in a second. Or, simply put, I personally believe that he really didn't have anything, and he was just trying to scramble through, like, to find whatever he could. But clearly he did find a little something, not as big as what people would have liked. But with the Astros situation, for me personally, I felt that he kind of just rushed right through it because I think he had something ripe, he had something hot, and he was willing to do whatever it took to get it, and he just didn't think it through. He thought he rushed right through it. He gave the players immunity, hence why they got no punishment, and that's why I think, like, I just personally think it was really rushed right from the start because they actually had something, and they were just ready to just lay the hammer down on them.
Sierra, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to find my charger.
No problem.
While I'm looking for it, though, I will say I do agree that I think with the Astros, the investigation was pretty rushed. And with that, I think to get the most information from players, I feel like they granted them immunity when that wasn't necessarily the right thing to do.
I was just about to ask that question, Sierra. Do you believe that the players getting the immunity, even when they had all those investigations, do you believe that played a big role in how quick the investigation lasted? And I'm not saying just for the Astros investigation, but also the Red Sox investigation.
Mm-hmm. I do absolutely agree with that because if you tell players, like, you know, if you tell us the truth, we won't take away your career or your money and grant you total immunity, meaning you're still able to play. Of course they'll tell all just because there's nothing on the line for them. And I don't think that's right because what they did was clearly wrong in the case of the Astros and even the Red Sox too. So, you know, I think that granting them immunity on both ends was the wrong thing to do. And I think it helped the investigation to get the maximum amount of information, but I still don't believe that is the right thing.
Well, remember, according to the sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Oh, sorry, Brian. I was just going to say, and you can pick off this point if you want. I was just going to say that the one thing I do not like about both investigations and any investigation that involves cheating, whether it's sign stealing illegally or steroids, right? The one thing I don't like is immunity, because basically if you're saying that if players are using PEDs, they get suspended for God knows how long, but if you cheat in some way, especially during multiple ball games during either the regular or even the postseason, then you're being a hypocrite. You're being hypocritical, and you're basically setting a double standard. And I don't like the immunity. I don't like this immunity thing, because what message are you sending to baseball fans everywhere, and even players who want to have their dreams come true, especially those in the minor leagues right now? And what do you tell little kids who look up to these players? Like, what do you tell them?
Well, the thing is, though, you got to remember from the league perspective. I'm not trying to defend the league. I'm just playing devil's advocate for a quick second. It's that you got to get to the bottom of this, and the best source of information for these investigations comes from the players and those involved with the investigation and those involved with the organizations. You kind of have to give some of them immunity at times. The Astros, I think it was taken to an extremely far degree. And that's why I'm completely livid about that situation with the Astros. They should have been punished right when the investigation was announced and the findings were revealed. That this was all driven by them, that they were the ones actively involved with this, and personally just their whole response to the entire situation when everyone was calling on them, like from that horrific initial press conference they had back when spring training was still in session, all the way to Astros playing and denying wearing wires, which is another big accusation. Like, that was a horrible look for them.
That was, by the way, one of the most pathetic excuses for a press conference I've ever seen. I know we're a show that has to be objective, but we can also be a show that has our opinions as well. That was one of the most pathetic and horrific excuses of a press conference I had ever seen. Right on
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, real quickly, from the Red Sox perspective, from what I've been reading, from what I understand, a lot of the Red Sox players were not given immunity, and they actually rejected it because a lot of them had nothing to hide. And going through a lot of the narrative that was going on these past few months, it seems kind of on board with that. And not just saying as a Red Sox fan, because you had a lot of team first club guys coming out, like Xander Bogaerts, Rafael Devers saying that, and even guys that had no real loyalty to the Red Sox, particularly Steve Pearce and Ian Kinsler, two guys that were only there for half of the season and went their own separate ways. They came in and they said, there was nothing really going on amongst a lot of the players, and that there was nothing suspicious about what was going on. But
I want to ask you the next question, because since we're talking about the topic of immunity here, the one part of the report that really somewhat in a way bothered me, and I don't know if it bothered you too, was that Manfred said in the final report earlier that even if the players were involved and even if they weren't given immunity, they would not have been disciplined. Did that kind of message, or I hope I interpreted that right, but did that kind of message bother you in some way? And does that put an effect, or would this kind of message play a role in potential MLB investigations in the future if there are any?
I mean, personally, am I cutting anyone off?
Sorry, Sierra, you can jump on after James makes his point. Go ahead, James.
No, I thought you were talking to me, but if it's intended for Sierra.
No, that was for you. That was for you,
James. Sorry.
Okay. So to clarify, the report said that the immunity wouldn't be granted if they didn't do anything wrong, or just clarify real quick.
Brian, can you look that up quickly?
What do you want me to look up specifically?
Look up the part where the report possibly said that whether players were granted immunity or not, they would not have been disciplined in a particular investigation.
All right, I'll try looking it up. James, you can keep going with your answer for right now.
So whether or not players were granted, I'm not really sure, to be honest. This is the first I'm hearing of it, but I guess the only real way to see how this would impact certain investigations is if another investigation wouldn't be necessary. But right now, I
found it. I apologize. So the part that I'm referring to is, as for players, and I'm reading this from the New York Post, okay? So I apologize for the delay, and Brian, I'm sorry for putting you in that position, and I'm sorry to everyone.
No, it's fine. It's all good. Read away.
I'm sorry for delaying everyone who's watching this video at home. As for players, the statement read, although the commissioner's office agreed not to discipline players who were truthful in their interviews based on the findings of the investigation, okay, based on the findings of the investigation, this is not a case in which I would have otherwise considered imposing discipline on players. So even whether immunity, from what I'm understanding, if I'm reading this right, whether immunity was granted or not, no matter what kind of role, whether this scenario could have been worse or not, it seems players would have gone off scot-free anyway, just like the Astros had gone off scot-free. James, am I interpreting that right?
You are. And that part I don't really agree with. Now, to go back to the granting immunity bit, obviously granting immunity outright is just not a good idea at all because, again, as you said, it sends a bad message to the people who watch it, especially the kids, the fans, et cetera, et cetera. However, by that same token, what providing immunity does is it gives players incentive to confess, which they otherwise wouldn't do if they weren't provided with that. So when it comes to that, I think the league should try and find a way to sort of provide players with an opportunity to tell the truth without giving them full immunity. Something like a lesson to suspension or something along those lines, because without the incentive to have things be, I guess, if the players are guilty, to have things be not as bad as they would have been will help you get to the bottom of what's going on. Otherwise, it'll take the investigation a lot longer.
Yeah, and I think another problem that it also brings in, sorry to interrupt, but another problem that I think gives up is that it gives the players the mindset that they could keep doing this. Because let's look at it this way. If I was an Astros player and I learned that if I just came clean and talked about what happened in 2017, and they're not going to punish me. Why would I stop? Seriously, I'm not going to get punished for it. I'm not going to get any discipline for it. It's all going to go on the organization. So I think it really gives the players the mindset that they could just keep doing this and they're going to face no consequences, which is wrong. They're full-grown adults. They knew what they were doing is wrong. They did it anyway. And it's just a horrible mindset. And it's a horrible possible message that Manfred is giving through the way he's been handing all this stuff out.
When
I agree.
The news broke. Oh, sorry, Sierra. You want
going off of Brian's point, kind of the message it sends through the organization is we value our players and keeping our players on their roster despite their actions, but our staff is completely replaceable. So it gives the wrong message that there's a lack of accountability for players for their actions, which I think is wrong.
Yeah.
I have a quick question in regards to Alex Cora, since we talked about him before.
Yeah.
He was the mastermind behind the 2017 scandal with the Houston Astros. No question about that. He played a huge role. If not, he was the mastermind. All right. Mm-hmm. And now we go into this, whether he knew about this scandal or not, it happened under his watch. Okay. It happened under his watch. So the question that I have is, do you think this punishment is the same as AJ Hinch and Jeff Lunau, former members of the Houston Astros organization?
Yeah.
Is this another slap on the wrist? Do you think he should have deserved a much larger suspension? Personally, I think he did. And I'm not saying that because he was the manager of the Red Sox. I'm saying that because I think he definitely deserved a larger suspension. And is there a possibility now that he could return as the Red Sox manager in 2021? Because now they just removed interim from Rob Reinke's status.
Yeah. For me, it's a two-layered answer. For me, my whole mindset for whether or not what his suspension was going to be, I think it was going to depend on what his the revealings from the Red Sox investigation revealed. And yeah, the 1-year ban for the Astros, 100% on the money for. Because Cora was the mastermind. AJ Hinch is still the manager, so he has to know everything that's going on, and he could have stopped it at any point. According to the report, and I'm just going on the wording of the report, it was unclear whether or not Alex Cora knew about any of this. So I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt, and let's say he didn't know, and this was behind his back as well. I personally still think it's a bad look because, you're the manager. You're the guy who wants to know what's going on in the clubhouse and is, to a degree, the organization. And for the second question, it's too hard to tell. On the one hand, yes, he didn't do as nearly horrific stuff as he did with the Astros, so I can understand bringing him back. The problem is the PR nightmare that will come if he comes back as manager of the Red Sox. That's really the big hesitating factor for me. So I'm going to leave it to this. I would say no, but never say never, because I could definitely see it happen because, stranger things have happened in sports these past few years.
So, James, let me ask you this. This is the second time now in 6 months, okay, since the Astros scandal broke out in November of last year. We're now in a 6-month span. Forget everything going on with coronavirus right now. This is a 6-month span. Twice now, the integrity of baseball especially Major League Baseball, has come into question. Do you see baseball not being a trustworthy sport in the months, if not maybe the next year or two to come?
Well, I think it's going to depend largely on how they go about the rest of the season and how they sort of treat the situations through as the time goes on. The punishments have been given out, and there's really not much they can do from here, regardless of whether they really wanted to or not. But it's gonna be very telling how they treat it. If they acknowledge that this was a bad situation and that they maybe even should have done more, then obviously it'll be telling that they are more responsible. But if they sort of treat it as if it wasn't as big a deal as it should have been, I think that's when their trustworthiness comes into question.
It's just like, for me, like getting to my whole thing with Manfred, it's just, I don't think he's handling this as good. He really should be handling this. Like the whole thing with the Astros, I felt they should have been handed much harsher punishments, especially on the players. Like the organizational stuff, okay, I could accept what they did with AJ Hinch, the general manager, and like the fines that were given in the draft picks. The players needed to face some sort of punishment for that. The Red Sox investigation dragged on much longer than it should, and it kept having to be pushed back, which was a horrible look for them. And just this whole bunch of other stuff that's been coming up, like talks about changing the rules of the game, talking about like shortening the games, which kind of eliminates the draw and the hardcore fans that people love about baseball, and even just stuff like calling the World Series trophy a piece of metal. That was really what crossed the line for me with Manfred, because like that is what so many. Yeah, that was because like playing in the World Series, that piece of metal is what 32 teams and hundreds of players are playing for, and just referring it to a piece of metal for me, it was like a slap in the face.
Slap in the face, yeah.
It was a slap in the face, and it's just Manfred. I don't know what he's doing, but clearly he is just hampering baseball more and more through a lot of his own stupid decisions. And like one last tidbit, like I know we call Roger Goodell horrible. At least the NFL is making a lot of money and business is booming over there. Baseball is losing fans. They are losing national interest, and it's just a horrible look overall for the entire league.
Absolutely.
I agree, and I feel like a big problem involves Robert Manfred looking at the wrong issues. For example, you go up to him and it's like, hey, we have a major scandal on our hands. It's like, you know what we need for this? A 14-team playoff. And it's just the same thing with him over and over again. It's like, hey, we're losing fans at a rapid rate. Oh, you know what we need? 7-inning doubleheaders. It's like, what? No, how does this solve anything? Baseball is trying way too hard to be something it's not. Listen, it's definitely not the most modern of the 4, arguably 5 major sports in the U.S. But listen, it's just got to embrace what it is. And I feel like Robert Manfred is allowing the losses to affect him in a way that's somehow making him think that baseball should be changed more than it really needs to be. Now, I could go for universal DH. I could totally go for universal DH. It beats having. I'd much rather have Robinson Cano coming out of the dugout to hit as opposed to him lumbering around second base for 9 innings and hoping he doesn't hurt his knee. But I mean, it's just an issue of him being able to address the right issues, and that it'll be really telling through how he goes about the rest of the season.
I'll tell you what, Rob Manfred, out of all the commissioners, I mean, right now, put Roger Goodell aside when it came to Deflategate, no one has had a much worse offseason and period of time in terms of, especially including the news that was released this week, than Rob Manfred.
Oh, yeah.
No one's had a much worse offseason or past couple of months or past several months since the ending of the World Series. It's really something. We're actually going to continue this conversation on our regular time show, which you will see on Sunday at 6. I want to thank Sierra. Unfortunately, she had technical difficulties. That's why she's not on the panel for the rest of the show, but I want to thank her. Brian, James, thank you so much for giving your insight. Again, we will discuss more about this with our regular panel this coming Sunday at 6 o'clock. And we will also discuss the other big news involving Rob Gronkowski and how he was traded to the Bucs, which means a reunion with Brady. What does that mean now for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and what does that also mean for the New England Patriots? On behalf of everyone here, I'm Matt Price. We will see you same pitch time, same pitch place. Have a good one, and stay sportacular.